I used to think that the universe operated under frequency and intention. She takes a step and breaks her other foot, and it breaks in the exact same bones, 3 separate bones, as the first foot. My only understanding of that experience was that I was a psychic. And he said, "Open your heart to me." Hi, it's Bee, also known as Brightybee on my social media handles. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you watching this video and listening to everything that I have to say today. So I actually filmed this video on my camera, and I filmed about 2/3 of it, and then I got up to go get a glass of water, and my camera just refused to turn on even though it had charge. So you can already tell that there is some spiritual warfare going on in making this video. But that's okay. I am now using my mom's phone, and I'm determined to make this video, and if anything, it just fuels me more and validates how true the path that I'm on is. There is no harm or force in hearing someone's story. I'm not here to change your mind or force you to believe what I believe. I'm just here to share my story. And I really encourage you to have an open mind. You can only gain from having an open mind, and you can only lose from having a closed mind. And I also pray that you have ears to hear and eyes to see in my story today. This is going to be a video on how I came to Jesus Christ as a New Age spiritual teacher. And just to give a brief background of who I was before I came to Christ, I was a New Age spiritual teacher, mainly on TikTok, and I would share esoteric spiritual content and tips in my TikTok videos. I also incorporated my spirituality into my business with psychic readings, tarot readings, and things like aura readings and stuff like that. I also had training from Dolores Cannon, and I was a QHHT hypnotherapist. This is just someone who is well renowned in the New Age spiritual community. I was also a devout student to Dr. Joe Dispenza, and I was very into things like meditation, hypnosis, law of attraction. I practiced moon rituals, and pretty much anything that you can think of in the New Age spiritual community, I was very into and I had deeply explored. When I would see someone in the spiritual community come to Jesus, I was very disturbed, to say the least. I think the most notable example of someone coming to Jesus in the spiritual community is someone named Doreen Virtue. And if you are in the New Age spiritual community, or you had come out of it, or even if you're a Christian, you may know of her story. She was incredibly famous, and I adored her. I loved her tarot cards. I loved her positivity. I loved her readings and videos on YouTube, and I felt this deep sense of comfort in her content and in her energy. And when she shifted to denouncing all of it and coming to Christ, I was very disturbed, and I felt like she lost that comfort that I related to and connected to in her previous content, and that made me really sad. It didn't make me inspired to come to Jesus. I felt like it was very eerie and strange, and it gave me a really bad feeling, to be honest. And she wasn't the only one that I saw in the spiritual community come to Jesus. There were a few others, and I remember them very well because all of them disturbed me. There was a few other spiritual TikTokers like myself around my age posting similar content to me that came to Jesus, and I was very disturbed and I could not wrap my head around it. And with my old belief system, I could not justify someone leaving New Age spirituality, denouncing all of it, and only being about Jesus. I couldn't justify that, and I couldn't understand it. So much so that I thought these individuals were under some sort of mind control or had something really bad happen to them to make them come to Jesus, which is funny to think about now. But I think there's a reason that I was so disturbed by people coming to Jesus. I was never disturbed by anyone coming into any other faith. Like if I saw someone get really into Buddhism or into any other religion, or if I saw someone change their beliefs, nothing disturbed me the way that coming to Jesus disturbed me. And it's just interesting to look back on that now, being on the other side of it. And it's all just funny to me now because I am on the other side of it and I am one of those people. So I also want to acknowledge that, my testimony could potentially disturb you in the way that other people's testimonies disturbed myself. This may be a lot to process, but I still encourage you to listen to it and to think about it and process it in your own time. If I were to view this video from the eyes of my past self, I would try and justify it through my old lens. So I'm here to tell you that I'm not a Christian and I didn't come to Jesus because of where I live, because of my family, because I was influenced by community or friends, because I had been through a lot and I had been through a lot of pain and it was the only thing that helped me, or because I found something that just worked for me. I was not seeking it and I actually didn't want it. I had an aversion to Christianity and I had an aversion to Jesus, and Jesus found me. And I'm actually forever grateful for that. I will forever be in gratitude for him finding me and coming to me and pulling me out of the belief system that I had and that I was deceived by. And I'm here to tell you with full confidence and self-awareness and acknowledgement that I was wrong and I was deceived, and I would feel really bad if I didn't come on here and make this video sharing what I know now and what I've learned and my new perspective. I would like to acknowledge my online community. I would like to acknowledge the people that were in my circle that looked up to me spiritually and related to me. And most importantly, I would like to acknowledge my clients and anyone that has ever worked with me. I acknowledge if this video is hard to watch and if it is uncomfortable. When someone who has a belief system that you relate to and that you connect to deeply changes their belief system, it can be really scary, honestly. And if you have questions come up for you and you want to know something about my new path or my new perspective on things or anything like that, please leave it in the comments below, because I think that it would be very beneficial for a lot of people to see my answer. But if it's something that you want to ask me privately, you're more than welcome to DM me and ask me in private. So a little disclaimer, my testimony is the way that it is because that's what I needed to come to God. And everyone has a different testimony and a different road to coming to Jesus for those that do. And it's so cool that we all end up at the same place, but everyone's story is unique and it's exactly what they needed to come to God. So I understand that my story might be a little dramatic and it does involve the supernatural, and that's something that I think I needed because I was so invested in the spiritual world. And so I needed these dramatic and supernatural events to unfold in my life so that I could unwind my belief system that I had prior. Growing up, I was not raised Christian whatsoever. My dad was very scientific, and that was really what he held on to in his belief system is science. That's what he put his faith into, and he was open-minded, but definitely fell more into the atheist category. My mom had like a lukewarm Christian upbringing, so she did believe in God, and she did practice prayer and teach us prayer, but she didn't know Jesus. She had never cracked open a Bible or anything like that. She did not go to church, and she actually became very new age when she was in college, and she started opening herself up to things like numerology and psychic readings and stuff like that. So I was raised to be open-minded. I was raised exploring lots of different types of religions and belief systems, actually. We explored like Hinduism and Buddhism, and we also explored things like Feng Shui and Reiki and Tsukiomo Hikari and lots of different Eastern philosophies and belief systems. But throughout all of that, God was taught to us, and we were taught to pray, which I'm super grateful for. I'm really glad that I was taught to believe in God and that I had somewhat of a connection and relationship to God through prayer. If you have followed me on my TikTok and consumed my spiritual content, you probably know that I came into this world with a sensitivity to the unseen and to the spiritual side of things. I came into this world just being able to see things like energy and have deep inner knowings that kind of came from nowhere. And because I didn't have a Christian perspective and I just had a New Age spirituality perspective, my only understanding of that experience was that I was a psychic and that I was a psychic medium, and these abilities were just like special and supernatural, and that I just came in with them early. I still had the belief system that everyone had the potential to be psychic and that I wasn't special or anything like that, but it was a unique experience, and I tried to understand it in the best way that I possibly could at that time in my life. I didn't start getting into New Age spirituality deeply until summer before college, and that's when I had my quote unquote like spiritual awakening, where I was becoming much more self-aware and I was questioning everything, and I was becoming more energetically sensitive, and I was becoming very curious with myself, with how the universe worked, how I worked, and I just had these very large existential questions that I wanted answers to, and I was exploring that externally in anything that I could find, and I was exploring it internally through meditation and my own spiritual practices. During that time that I was deepening my spirituality, I was also very passionate about healing myself. And I really wanted to become the best version of myself, and I really wanted to stop my toxic coping mechanisms and overcome the trauma that I had endured in childhood. In addition to exploring my spirituality, I was also really invested in learning how to heal myself through self-development books, through psychology. I was constantly consuming that type of information online. I just remember watching like so many TED Talks before bed, finding different podcasts. I was just so hungry to heal and also have answers to all these different questions that I had. In 2020, I started making spiritual content, but fast forward to before I started making spiritual content, I initially started my TikTok with the intention of creating videos around self-development, around psychology that offered helpful tips to help people overcome trauma, help people overcome a negative mindset and become better versions of themselves. And that was actually a lifelong dream of mine. I had wanted to start a YouTube video in high school, and I really looked up to the girls that had YouTube videos that posted like holistic content and posted about healing and posted about psychology and posted about personal growth, and I really wanted to make that type of content. So when I started my TikTok, that was the intention, and that's what I truly wanted to share. I actually didn't have the intention of sharing my spirituality on my TikTok when I started it. But there was one day where I decided to share an experience I had in meditation, and I was just feeling really inspired after this meditation, and I just wanted to just like share it with my audience. I didn't put much thought into it, I just shared it, and that video went pretty viral, and I got a lot of feedback, and there were a lot of people that clearly wanted to see more spiritual content, and I did have a lot of answers to the questions they were asking and did know a lot about the topics that they were interested in seeing. So I started posting more spiritual content, and those were the videos that did really well. And looking back on my content history, if you are interested in making content or you're a content creator yourself, you can really easily get sucked into the wrong track if you just make videos based on what does well and what goes viral instead of what you want to be known for and the audience you're truly trying to attract. So that's a little tip of advice for anyone that's into creating content. Looking back on it, the perspective that I had was, okay, this is needed and this is what the universe wants from me and this is the direction I'm being guided in. And even though it was uncomfortable for me to share my spiritual side, I felt like it was my duty in a way. Like I was helping people and that it was something that I had to do for the people that I would help. And it wasn't really about me, it was about the people that I would help. So I needed to make that type of content. And that was really my perspective. And I did get a lot of incredible feedback, and there were so many people that said that type of content was so helpful for them and they loved it, and that was their favorite thing about me and their favorite thing about my content. But now looking back, I see how I was kind of deceived and tricked into just putting out that type of content, and how that pulled me deeper into New Age and how I felt almost reliant on it for my business and my career. Throughout that time period in my life when I was making spiritual content and I was really into self-development and psychology, I was truly healing. I learned so many practical and incredible tools, and I still use those and teach them today. I overcame anxiety and depression. I overcame negative thinking, and I overcame people pleasing, codependency, all these different things that I was really struggling with. I did overcome, and I did become a very happy person, and I have had a really healthy mindset ever since. So everything that I was learning and doing and applying was really working and was really helpful for me. However, the spiritual side of things was actually opening doors for me into areas that were not spiritually safe, and that's something that I'll get into later. So the spiritual side of things wasn't actually what healed me. It was really the self-development and psychology side of things that truly healed me, and all of the mindset perspective shifts, the somatic healing, the reprogramming, all of that sort of thing did truly shift me. And those are all things that I still practice today. Like I said, I still am a life coach. I have just taken out the esoteric, like spiritual side of things, but I still teach self-development. I still help people heal and overcome negative thinking and anything that they want to overcome, essentially. And to work with me, it doesn't matter if you still believe in the New Age spiritual beliefs that I used to believe in, or if you're a Christian, or if you're anything else. It does not matter. I've always had clients from all different beliefs, backgrounds, and that will not affect our coaching relationship whatsoever. The self-help and psychology community is so intermixed with the New Age spirituality community that when people go to heal trauma nowadays, they almost think that they need to start a spiritual journey to start a healing journey. And this is a tragic lie, and actually so dangerous, and they need to be separated. And I was one of those people that fell into this, and I think it's something that really needs to be talked about, because I don't want other people falling into this either. Throughout my spiritual journey, I could always get behind God. Like I said, I love to pray, I loved God, but I could not get behind Jesus. I thought it was really weird to pray to him and to use him as this middleman to get to God. I just thought that that was really strange. I just thought you should always go directly to God. There's never anything that you need in between or extra to get closer to God. You naturally have that connection to God where you can just go straight to God and there's no reason to have Jesus at all. And my perspective of Jesus was that he was someone that achieved a very high vibration and achieved the highest vibration ever known, which is known as Christ consciousness in the New Age community, and that he became an ascended master. And he was someone similar to like Buddha or someone like that who achieved a very high level of consciousness, who achieved enlightenment. But I still felt like he achieved the highest because there was a lot of rhetoric in the spiritual community around Christ consciousness and that being a goal that you were trying to achieve in your own spiritual journey. But that was really the only thing talked about in reference to Jesus in the spiritual community. I think I also felt really turned off by the Christians that I knew in my life and the people that talked about Jesus and that were supposed to represent him. I feel like the meanest comments that I got were from people talking about Jesus and that claimed to be Christian, and I just saw them as very judgmental. I didn't feel love coming from them, and I don't feel like they represent Jesus and who he is, to be honest. And I feel like that's a really big issue that turns people away from Jesus. It definitely turned me away from him more and intensified my aversion to him. I also never felt connection to God in church. I felt like it was a very stale environment whenever I had gone to church. I felt genuinely bored and it just felt dull. I didn't feel the presence of God in church, and I'm someone who's very sensitive to energy and to feeling anything emotionally or on a spiritual level. So to not feel that in a church felt like, okay, well, we're just not doing it in the right way. It felt like this isn't something that I can get here. I can get this feeling in other things, and I felt like I could get that through New Age spirituality. I also really didn't like religion. I didn't like that it felt like it put you in this box. It felt very restrictive and it felt like it perpetuated shame. And I thought of shame as something that lowered your vibration and separated you from God, which I still do to some capacity, but that perspective has really shifted and I have a newfound understanding for it. But I saw it as this thing that shamed you for things that you shouldn't be ashamed of, things that God created you to be, like expressing yourself in your sexuality and stuff like that. I just thought that the Christian culture shaming that was going against the way that God designed you and created you. So I really just didn't understand it. And I didn't like the word sin. My limited understanding of Christianity felt like it was restrictive and shameful, and it just didn't feel like a path that held acceptance and expansion and understood what I understood, because I felt like in my prideful past that I really understood the way things worked in the universe more than people that were Christian, to be completely honest. But I also carry this belief that anyone could achieve enlightenment and Christ consciousness and that you could get there through any religion. And if you got that through Christianity, great, but you can also achieve it through New Age spirituality, or you can also achieve it through any means of spirituality. And that was my previous perspective on Christianity and Jesus. I've thought about whether I was going to do an in-depth version of this testimony or summarize things or leave out the crazy supernatural things, but I kept getting the message from God to share this entire story because this is the story he wrote for me in my life, and I would be doing him a disservice if I were to not share the full story. I want to start with talking about the major seeds that were planted in my life, because looking back on my journey to Christ, those seeds were so important. And even though I was not ready at the time at all, those seeds were still so crucial and have blossomed and grown over time. So the first seed was in one of my prayers. I had a prayer practice and I would pray to God. It wasn't nearly what I have now in the prayer practice I have now, but I would still pray and I would still reach out to God and I would still want to get close to God. There was one time that I remember asking a question that I've never asked before, and I'm not sure why I never asked this question, but I told God, I said, I want to know you better. I want to get closer to you. I want to become the version of myself that you made me for. I want to become this version of myself. How can I become this person? How can I reach my fullest potential? And I remember clearly hearing, learn about Jesus Christ. And I was so not ready to hear that I was like, that was weird. Like, why did he say that? I mean, I guess it makes sense if he was someone that achieved a really high state of consciousness. Like, I can copy someone that achieved a high state of consciousness and then achieve a high state of consciousness myself. But that was like how I responded to that situation, and honestly, like, didn't think anything of it and just kept practicing my belief system and seeking in my belief system. And I didn't get to know Jesus at all at the time. I didn't open a Bible. I didn't do anything to connect to Jesus, but it was an important seed. The second seed that was planted was when I was invited to go to church. And I, being the open-minded person that I was like, yeah, I'll try anything, you know, even if this isn't my thing, I would still love to try it and experience it. So I went to this church service. I immediately started bawling my eyes out and I could not understand it. I just, like, logically, I just had no reason to cry. I didn't feel particularly moved by anything that they said. I wasn't thinking about anything. I didn't have any special moment. I just could not stop sobbing during worship. And now I know that that was the Holy Spirit touching me and affecting my heart and opening me up. But at the time, I was so confused and I loved it. Like, I loved that they were singing about God, but I remember whenever they talk about Jesus in the sermon that day that I went, I would just feel like, ugh, like, I'm cool with God, but just the whole Jesus thing is just like weird to me or too much. That's what I thought at the time, which is so crazy. But after that, just still very deep in New Age spirituality. I didn't think much of it, but I just thought that that was kind of a cool experience. Then, because I was a Dr. Joe Dispenza student, I had been going to many Dr. Joe Dispenza meditation retreats. There was one meditation retreat in particular that I was at where Jesus came to me in a meditation. And just to give a little background on, like, my experience with beings coming to me, it wasn't super crazy for me to come into contact with something supernatural or, like, not of this realm in meditation. I would have very elaborate visions in meditation, oftentimes prophetic visions. I would speak to what I thought were spirit guides and what I thought were, like, higher dimensional beings. And so it wasn't crazy for me to see a being, but I had never seen Jesus, and it was still a big deal, but it wasn't like it was the only thing I had ever seen. So when Jesus came to me, he stood right in front of me, and I had my eyes closed, and he said, "Open your heart to me." And that's all he said. And I was just amazed, but I didn't physically open my heart to him. I was scared. And I think subconsciously I was really scared for what that would mean, and I just was not ready. And so that was the first moment I had with him. Fast forward to another Dr. Joe Dispenza event where I was in meditation, same thing. He came to me, stood right in front of me, and said the exact same thing. And he said, "Open your heart to me." And again, I couldn't fully open my heart to him. I remember just, like, mentally just being like, "Thank you, I'm so grateful that you're here." But physically and emotionally and spiritually, I was not opening myself up to him. And I just, again, I didn't feel ready. and it scared me. Another very important seed was hearing someone else's testimony. And this is a dear friend of mine, and she might be watching this video. I'll definitely be sending it to her, but her name is Laurel. And she told me about how she was a devout follower of Doreen Virtue, and she was a psychic medium, and she actually owned a metaphysical shop. And when Doreen Virtue denounced it all and started to follow Jesus Christ, she did the same thing. And she told me this story, and I was so shocked and so disturbed, because I was like, how could you abandon these abilities that God gave you? And how could you just turn away from something that I felt was the truth and felt so connected to? And I just did not understand it. And in the same way that I was disturbed with Doreen Virtue, I was disturbed by her testimony and sad for her and really confused. And I asked her, I was like, did you feel better? And she was like, yes, I did feel better after throwing away all my tarot cards and crystals and stuff like that. And I could not wrap my head around it, because those were things that I thought brought me so much clarity, so much peace, that were raising my vibration, that were guiding me. And so I remember being really disturbed by it, but it definitely planted a seed. And I was just thinking about it constantly for the next few days and just not able to wrap my head around it. But her testimony is really powerful and really important to me and my journey. And I think that's why it's also so important to share your story. And you never know what's going to happen with it, but it is so important to share your story with people. After Laurel told me her testimony, I decided to pray. And I decided to pray using Jesus's name and the Holy Spirit, just to see, out of curiosity, what would happen. And when I did that, I felt this like darkness come over me and around me. I felt these darker beings enter the room. I felt this darkness, and I got really scared. And that night, I had a horrible night's sleep. I was so afraid, and I felt this darkness in the room. And I thought, wow, this is really not the path for me. This really isn't good if this is what I'm experiencing. But now I know exactly why that was happening, and it's not because it's not the right path, it's because it is the right path. And those darker things do not want you getting on that path, and they will do anything in their power to scare you and to frighten you and derail you from coming to Jesus. Another very large seed that was planted in my life was when I was living in Costa Rica. And I was on this random beach on this road trip with friends, and we were in this like pretty remote part of Costa Rica where it was very unlikely that you were gonna run into someone that spoke English. And this guy walks up to me, and the first thing that he says to me is, "Do you know Jesus?" And I said, well, I mean, I've connected to him in meditation. I saw him in meditation, so I feel like I'm connected to him. And he was like, no, like, do you know him? Do you know him? Do you know his character? Do you have a relationship with him? Does he speak to you? Do you know his heart? And I was like, no, I don't know him like that. And he was telling me like how to know him like that. And we ended up talking for like 45 minutes to an hour about God. And I loved the conversation. And I love having conversations with people about these types of things. Even if they have different opinions than me, I think it's very important and very healthy to have in-depth conversations with people that have different belief systems than you. And that it's really good for you to really hear out everyone's perspective and why they think the way that they think, how they got there, what their story is in all aspects, not just religion, but in everything. So having this conversation was really special to me and important to me, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed, even though we had different beliefs, I really enjoyed talking to him. And at the end of the conversation, he said, ask God to reveal to you your chains. And in that moment, my phone fell on the ground. And I made this joke and I was like, oh, well, I guess that's my chain. But it definitely was, looking back on it. But that was another major seed planted in my life, was that conversation. So around this same time, my mom started exploring the idea of Jesus. And she was exploring it through the mystical lens and was really curious about, what happened to Jesus before he showed up at 30 years old? Where was he? What was he learning? How did he get that information? And she was really interested and intrigued with the Essenes and the whole mystical side of Jesus. And she was just curious from a new age spiritual perspective and just wanted to know more about him and his story. And that just led her to actually getting a Bible, and eventually through that just becoming fascinated, because as soon as she started reading the Bible, she was like, what? This is in the Bible? There's poetry in the Bible? I wish I knew this information. And she was just blown away by it. And her and I had always thought that, the Bible was something that had been altered so many times, and that I just never saw it as something that would like drastically change my life. Honestly, I just never saw it as something like that special. I just saw it as like, okay, that's like the book for that religion, and I had no idea what it truly meant. And so she was going through her own revelation at that time. And I was really deep into my spiritual practice. I was really satisfied with my spiritual practice. And I was also really protective and defensive over it. So when she would talk to me about what she was learning and talk to me about the Bible and stuff like that, I just kind of had my guard up a little bit. And I would say, that's amazing that you're learning this, and that this is something that is adding to your life, but I just have different beliefs. I don't have any desire to change my belief system right now. This isn't something that I'm open to. Like, basically saying, like, I don't really want to talk about this as much as you want to talk about this. I had no interest in it, and I just was not open to it. I was just so satisfied with where I was at, and I didn't feel intrigued by her path at all. So during this time that my mom was reading the Bible, she started going to that church that I had gone to and had the emotional experience at. She started going to it consistently, and she started feeling a desire to start her life with Jesus and to accept him as her Lord and Savior, and to really commit her life to him. And she made the decision to get baptized. And after she made that decision, really strange things started to happen. Really strange things. Now I know why this happened, but at the time, I just thought it was really weird. I didn't understand why these strange things were happening to her. So she decides to get baptized, and her baptism is scheduled for the day that I fly from Costa Rica to Nashville to be with my family for the holidays. And she had told me, weird things happen to a lot of people when they want to get baptized. So she did know what was going on a little bit, and she had told me, there are demonic influences that do not want you to get baptized. And that's why supernatural things or bad things start happening to people right before they get baptized. And I just didn't really have that perspective or understanding before. So I just didn't really understand what that was all about. I was like, that seems kind of strange. My mom scheduled herself to get baptized with a really close friend. And the week before the scheduled baptism, this friend started to do really strange things. They started having a lot of anxiety, having a lot of issues sleeping, insomnia, feeling really nauseous out of nowhere, even throwing up and having like food poisoning symptoms out of nowhere. And this friend's neck would move like this, which my understanding before was like, oh, that's probably Kundalini energy or something like that. And there was one moment when my mom was in the car with this friend, when the friend looked over at my mom and hissed. And at that moment, my mom knew that that person had a demonic entity attached to them, and that entity did not want this person getting baptized. And I didn't know what to think about that. Like when my mom said that this was going on and that was her perspective on these things, I just didn't know what to think about that. I just thought, I can believe that people can get possessed and stuff like that, but I feel like that's very extreme. It would be an extremely rare circumstance for someone to get possessed or have a demon or an evil spirit or something like that. I did have the perspective that people could have darker entities on them and attached to them, but I didn't see it as like demons in them. I just saw it as like darker spirits or beings that, were on someone or around someone. My perspective before was also that everything is frequency, so I just thought that anyone that had darker spirits around them had a very low frequency, and it was a matter of frequency, and that it was just a frequency issue, and that if they were to raise their frequency, they would not have this issue anymore. But that was my previous understanding of things and how the world worked. As my mom's getting closer to her baptism, the strange things start happening with the friend. She's starting to think that there's probably something demonic going on there because something hissed at her. I mean, it's pretty crazy for that to happen, so I will give her that. She was more concerned with the friend than she was with herself. She was thinking, okay, like if anything really weird's gonna happen, it's gonna be with this friend because really weird things have already been happening with this person. The morning of the baptism hits and my mom comes down the stairs. This is right before the baptism, and for some reason, she just misses like the last 4 steps and breaks her foot. Immediately, she knew like what had happened, and she felt like it was something that did not want her to get baptized. And going into my old perspective again, I would have said, oh, well, she probably attracted that. She probably manifested that because she was thinking that something was going to happen to her. So something happened to her. That was my old belief system. And she's still determined to try and go get baptized. So we, through lots of struggle, ended up getting to church, but we had gotten there so late because of her foot breaking that she was turned away from getting baptized and wasn't able to get baptized, unfortunately. But when we sat in the sermon that day was about spiritual warfare, and that timing of that was pretty crazy. And she rescheduled her baptism, but because Christmas was the next month, they weren't going to have baptisms for 2 months. So she had to wait 2 months to get baptized. And I was visiting her, and she had a broken foot, so we weren't able to do that much. But she really wanted me to watch The Chosen, which is a wonderful show about Jesus and the gospel. And if you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend watching it. I think you can watch it all for free on the Chosen app. But she was trying to get me to watch it, and I had an aversion to it. I was like, I am not that interested in this path that you're on. Like, I don't really want to watch this. And she was like, no, just watch 1 episode. Like, you have to. And she was begging me. I was like, okay, fine. I'll watch 1 episode. So I watched 1 episode with her. And by the end of it, I was like, okay, this is actually pretty good. And so we ended up watching more. And I just like tried to encourage myself to have an open mind, but just was still very resistant to her path. And like, I'm someone that has to make my mind up for myself. I don't want to be influenced by anyone. So if I'm going to make a decision, it's on my own, separate from you. I'm not being influenced by you. And so I was very stubborn in that. But we started watching this show, and I loved it, and I felt like I could connect to who Jesus was for the first time in my life. And it was just so incredible to have a new understanding of who this person was and what they did and what their character was like and how they treat people and how they live. And I just really fell in love with who Jesus was, and I was really curious to connect with him more through that, but I really wanted to do it separately and really in my own way. So we went back to this church and had been going throughout the time that I was home for the holidays. And that's when Jesus came to me for the third time. And he said the exact same thing that he had said before. And he said, "Open your heart to me." And in that moment, because I had gotten to know him a little bit better through watching The Chosen, I felt safe enough to truly open my heart to him. And in that moment, I just tried my best. I went into my heart and I just opened it as much as I could. And I just told him, like, I open myself up to you. Like, show me what it is that you want to show me. I want to see where you lead me, and I want to see what you're all about. And in that moment, I did not know what that would mean for me. And I did not know the weight of that decision. And I didn't know what it would do. But I felt something come over me, and I was just so emotional, crying so hard in that moment. And it was such a special moment. But I didn't think that doing that would change anything. I thought, okay, cool. Now I have this connection to Jesus and I can connect to him. But I didn't think that anything in my life would change. I didn't think anything in my spirituality would change, or in my practices, or in my businesses with my tarot readings and stuff like that. I didn't think anything like that would change. I just thought this is just a cool new part of my life that I'm exploring. And I saw it as something that was very separate from Christianity for some reason, because I wanted to separate it, because I still didn't feel comfortable with anything that I thought Christianity represented. I only felt comfortable with Jesus. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to pursue this as just Jesus and pursue him and connect to him, which is still something I think that everyone should do that is open to this path. I still think that you should always go directly through Jesus and directly connect to Jesus and open yourself up to him and pursue that personal relationship versus, a pastor or someone or a Christian or anything like that. So after this, I was feeling closer to God. I was feeling closer to Jesus and excited for my new life and the year that was to come ahead. I was moving officially into an apartment in Costa Rica, and I felt like my life was about to just kind of take off. And so after all of that, I packed up everything and I moved into my apartment in Costa Rica. And during that time, I was still, practicing all the things I was practicing in my business and my spirituality, but also I was praying a little bit more than I was before. I was having intentional prayers and I was feeling closer to God, and I was telling God, I want to get closer to you. I want to know you better. I want to make you proud. I don't want to do things that make me feel shameful. I don't want to do things that aren't good for me anymore. I want to do things that are good for me, and I want to be a better version of myself. I want to be better. I want to do better. Please help me get there. And saying prayers like that were really meaningful and intentional. And about 3 weeks into my move there and getting settled into this apartment, I got extraordinarily ill with black mold poisoning. And I was very, very sick. I could barely see. My vision was blurred. I was very fatigued. It was almost impossible to get up and walk to the door. I started having seizures. I was in this intense delirium where I just felt so disconnected from reality and life and was very sick. And even though it was the last thing that I wanted, I had to move home back to Nashville and move in with my mom to get treatment in the US. And looking back, I see this as such a blessing, because it's the reason that I got onto the path that I'm on now. And it was God answering my prayers in those moments when I was on my knees, asking him for what I have right now. Synchronistically, the night that I was to fly back to the US and move back here to get treatment here was the day of my mom's second scheduled baptism. So both times I was flying from Costa Rica to the US was the day of both of the scheduled baptisms for my mom. Going into the second baptism, she was more determined than ever to get baptized. As you can imagine, 2 months with a broken foot and feeling even more validated about her path now that she was up against the spiritual warfare of something not wanting her to get baptized. So she's all ready to go, and she stands up out of her chair. Her legs are not crossed or anything, and she takes a step and breaks her other foot. And it breaks in the exact same bones, 3 separate. And so now she has identical breaks on both her feet, and both of her feet are broken. And both happened just hours before her scheduled baptism. So this is too much to be a coincidence. Clearly, something does not want my mom getting baptized. Something evil does not want my mom getting baptized. Now I'm starting to believe in the devil, and I am opening myself up more and more to Jesus. I start praying more. I start praying daily. I even started reading a little bit of the Bible. I think I started with Psalms, and it would make me so emotional every time it just like touched me. And I couldn't understand it because it was not something that my mind was reading. It was like my soul was reading it. And I would just cry, and I still cry all the time when I read the Bible, but it was really starting to touch me and hit me in a new way. And through this new openness and through this new understanding of the devil, which is also called the enemy, I was opening myself up more and more to Jesus and to Christianity. And that was terrifying for me. It was psychologically one of the hardest things that I have ever gone through. Unwinding the belief system that I had before, rethinking things, felt so scary, and I felt like I was going crazy. I was just like, am I losing my mind? Is this really the right path? Is this the wrong path? What is going on? Well, and it's because when you experience a new truth that is so true that you can't deny it, then if that thing is true, then that means this can't be true. And all these other things that I thought are not true either. And so unwinding that was so scary. And I felt like I was going crazy every day. I felt like I was losing my mind. And yet I was still comforted at the end of the day. There was still a part of me that knew it was the right path. I knew I had to keep moving forward. I knew I had to see it through. And I'm someone that goes all in to something when I'm interested in it. If there's something that I want to pursue or take on, I will give it everything, and I will give it my all. And that's exactly what I did with Jesus. And I just became so interested in following him and learning everything I could about him and getting closer to him while I was going crazy, while I was unwinding so much in my belief system and in my psyche. And I feel like I really need to speak to that process, because if any of you have gone through it, you know, it's something that I want you to be able to connect to with me. And also, if it's something that you could potentially start going through after seeing this video, just know that it is normal and it is something that I went through, and I'm also here to support you if you're in that now, if you're about to be in that, or if you're in that years in the future and you come back to this video. I'm here to support you through that, because I know that it is hard and it's so challenging, But what you need to know is that Jesus is there for you in all of those moments, and that it will just keep bringing you peace. And that's what the truth does. The truth brings you so much peace. And even when everything else feels so crazy and so chaotic, that thing will give you some type of reassurance in that time. And throughout that, things just kept happening that strengthened my new path and my new understanding of Jesus. God kept giving me moments of truth that were undeniable. And I'm so grateful for that, because it was so needed. And if you're in that process, or when you're in that process, pray for those moments, because they were truly so helpful. And I believe that God will give someone so much encouragement and give them those moments when they are going through the process of unwinding a belief system. Previously, being someone that was spiritual and understood the spirit realm through, what I thought were psychic abilities, the spirit realm was not unknown to me and wasn't this super intimidating thing. It was actually something that I felt really comfortable in and felt like I understood. I knew there was good and bad entities in the spirit realm, but I thought that everything operated under frequency and intention. That was my old belief system of how the universe operated, that everything was about frequency and intention. So that if you were in a lower frequency, or even if you held on to some type of trauma, then you could experience these lower vibrating beings. And same goes for if you are in a high vibration, you could experience higher vibrating beings. And that was just my old belief system. I also believed that I had some type of dominion over these entities through frequency. For example, I noticed that if I was in a lot of fear, it felt like darker beings had more control or power. But if I was in love and in bliss, then they couldn't have any power over me, or I wouldn't experience them at all. And I felt like I could, send them away from me if I was experiencing something darker and supernatural through frequency and through intention, and that's how things operated. And I did experience that being true to some extent, but not in the way that I thought it would. Yes, if I was not in fear, things would subside and it would feel better naturally. And if I was in love, then things would feel better and stuff like that. And I feel like I could use my intention to kind of clear a room or a space, but nothing was permanent. And they were kind of responding to me in that way, but I think it was just to try and trick me into thinking that that's how things worked, because now I have so much experience and truth and understanding that that's not how they operate. They do not operate like that. And thinking that they do operate like that is pretty spiritually dangerous and scary, honestly. The moment that everything changed for me was a moment where I'm trying to decide if I'm actually going to share this story for what it is, because I'm very afraid of being this vulnerable and sharing this story online, but at the same time, I have shared such crazy spiritual things online before that, is it really that crazy for me to share more? Not really, but I'm just letting you know that it's really hard for me to share this, and I am afraid of what people will think. But I know that that's not a reason to not share something. Is if you're afraid of what people think, you should share it if you know that that's the right thing to do. And I do know that that's the right thing to do. So I will share it. There was an experience with this friend that had been showing those strange symptoms before their baptism, where now, even though they were baptized, those symptoms had increased. The baptism definitely helped. They felt way better and more connected to themselves and more connected to God. But after about 2 weeks, those symptoms started to worsen. They were feeling very overwhelmed. The nausea and the throwing up persisted, and something needed to be done. And my mom, having done a lot of research in Christianity and in the spirit realm side of Christianity, she understood what was going on in this person, which was demonic oppression. She understood what they needed, which was deliverance, which is removal of these demons that are plaguing this person. And she understood why this was happening. So a lot of people struggle with demonic oppression, but they would never know it and they wouldn't come to the surface. But because this person was getting so close to God, they started to reveal themselves in this person. But if that person had never gotten that close to God, I don't know if that would have ever been revealed. It could have just been hidden forever, which is so crazy. The other thing is, if someone does have demons, they won't necessarily show signs that they do, like the movements, the head movements and the nausea and stuff like that, unless God really wants them to be free, or they really are trying to free themselves. And of course God wants everyone to be free, but he knows, like, timing wise when it's right. My mom knew that this person needed deliverance, and she understood that every single one of us, through the authority of Jesus Christ, have the authority to cast out demons. That was one of the first things that Jesus did. That was one of the main things that he taught his followers to do, is that you cast out demons in my name. So she knew that that was something that she could do, and that was something that she was supposed to do with this person, even though she didn't know much about deliverance. She didn't know much about the process or what she was getting herself into. She decides to deliver this person. They come over to our house and we start preparing to do this deliverance. I was not going to have any part in it because it really freaked me out. I felt like I was in way over my head. I had no knowledge or training in this category, and I felt like I was just getting comfortable with Jesus. I didn't feel like I knew enough or I was close enough to him on my path to do something like this. And my mom felt very confident. She was like, you know what? I will do it. I know I can do this. And she was very convicted and very determined to do this deliverance that night. But as time went on, my mom fell into this very deep sleep, and she could not get herself to wake up. And she just felt like someone had drugged her, honestly. She was so tired, and now I know that this was spiritual warfare. This was the enemy attacking her, trying to get her not to do this deliverance. And out of nowhere, she became so tired. She was like, I'm sorry, I can't do this. I cannot do this deliverance. I am too tired. And she fell asleep. And so I was with this person, and I was still sick at the time. I was still very sick with mold symptoms, and I felt very, very fatigued on every level. I felt like I had nothing to give. I wasn't even working at the time. And I was like, there's absolutely no way that I have anything in me to do anything like this. And I decided to pray. After my mom had fallen into that sleep and she wasn't able to help, I was nervous about what to do. And so I prayed, God, if this is something that you want to take place tonight, then show me. And if this is something that you want me to be a part of, if this is something that you want me to participate in and also help in, then please give me the energy to do this, because I feel like I have nothing. I feel like I can't do this. And if you want me to do this, and if this is going to happen tonight, then it needs to come from you. And because I can't do it and I don't have the strength. And I was just pleading with my heart open. And in that moment, I swear, this is the most incredible experience I've ever had with Jesus, and it is so special to me, and I promise that it was real and it is exactly what happened. I closed my eyes and I saw the heavens open up, but this time Jesus was looking down on me from heaven. He wasn't standing in front of me. He was looking down on me from heaven. I saw the heavens part, and he just looked at me. He didn't say anything, and he went like this with his left hand. And out of his hand shot a giant lightning bolt that went in through the top of my head, down through my spine, and completely electrocuted me to the point where my whole body lifted off the bed. And in that moment of contact with that frequency, I just began to bawl my eyes out. After being lifted up and electrocuted, I was just crying and sobbing because I had touched God in a way. I had touched something so beautiful and powerful, and it was in me, and I could not stop crying. It was so remarkable. And after that, I knew, oh my gosh, like, I'm supposed to do this. I'm supposed to help in this deliverance. God just gave me the energy to do this, and I was still scared. I felt incapable because I had never done anything like that before, and I didn't know what to do. And I texted my mom, even though she was asleep, and I said, it's happening. We are doing this tonight, and it's happening. And I said, you need to wake up and come up here right now. And by the grace of God, her phone dinger went off. She never goes to sleep with her phone not completely shut off in another room, but it went off, and she dragged herself out of bed and came upstairs, and we started casting demons out of this person in the name of Jesus. And I was not afraid. I felt so much peace inside of myself. I felt God's hand on me and moving through me. I felt Jesus in the room. I felt the presence of God. There was not an ounce of fear in my body. I felt so much peace, but I saw the demons show themselves in this person. It was not like the movies where they're like flying stuff through the air and levitating and stuff like that. It was more so in sounds and facial expressions and stuff like that. And a lot of times when demons come out of someone, there's a lot of coughing, yawning, burping, and in some cases, vomiting as well. And in this case, not this night, but sometimes that definitely happens. So that is what I was seeing in this person. And this really changed my belief system. This really affected me because I watched how those demons only responded to the name of Jesus Christ. They did not respond to frequency because I tried. They did not respond to anything that I had thought could protect someone or help them or cast out a demon, like a crystal or something that you put intention to, like an evil eye or anything like that. There was nothing that these demons would respond to other than the authority of Jesus Christ. And to see that and to witness that, that meant that everything I thought about the spirit realm and the spirit world was not true, was a lie. And that meant that Jesus Christ was real, and he really came, and he really took dominion over Satan and his workers, which are the fallen angels, which are demons. That meant that that story is real. And that meant that everything else in connection to Jesus is real. If that's real, then all of this is real. And to see that and to witness that was so profound and exactly what I truly needed to truly submit to Jesus and truly accept him into my life as my Lord and Savior and to really follow him, because I saw that those demons would have never come out without him. They would have never come out without him. And that night changed me forever. It changed me forever. And it changed my mind forever. I could never go back to my old belief system after seeing the truth of Jesus Christ and what his name does and what his power brings to every situation. My old belief system, for what I thought protected me, could not have protected me in that situation. And if anything, no, not if anything, most of what I thought protected me and most of what I thought brought me closer to God was actually opening doors to allow demons to have access to my life and for the enemy to have access to my life, and was actually harming me more, was actually bringing me further away from God, which I know is something that is really scary to think about and hear if you also carry the belief system that I had, but that's the truth. And I would feel terrible if I didn't tell you the full truth of what I know now. Ever since that night, I have been all about Jesus and I have grown closer and closer to him. And that was exactly what I needed to truly choose him. Even though I had opened my heart to him and I was getting curious and I was open to the path and I was interested in what this path had to offer now, I didn't truly get convicted until that night. And since then, I have grown so much closer to God and so much closer to him, to where I've actually developed a relationship with him. And I feel like I'm getting to know him and I'm falling in love with that process, and I'm falling in love with him more and more as I open my heart and expand my life to him and give my life to him. It is the most freeing thing you could ever do to give your life to Jesus, because truly all weight that you thought that you needed to carry on your own is lifted when you allow Jesus to hold that for you. You feel truly free and truly safe. Like, I did feel safe before, but now that I know what I know about the spirit realm and about Jesus Christ, I know I am truly safe with him. I know that I am truly spiritually protected and protected with Jesus. It has filled me with awe to see what he has done in my family and to see the ways that he has answered my prayers, to see how quickly my prayers have been answered, and to see that every prayer gets answered. You know, it might not get answered right away, but every single prayer gets answered. And that has really happened since I have started following Jesus. I feel more myself than I've ever felt in my life. I feel like the me that I was when I was a little girl, that innocence and that purity that I felt has returned to me. And I feel more of my true self with Jesus than I ever felt before. And that was one of the tricks of deception that I fell into in the New Age spiritual path, was just finding my own identity and finding my own expression that was unique and me. And what it really did was kind of pull me away from the true me. And now when I identify with Jesus and who I am through that, I feel like my true self. And I love her so much. I love who I am now. I love my life now. I love living a life close to God and close to Jesus. And I would never go back to the beliefs that I have before. I know too much now. I've seen too much now to ever go back to the belief system that I had before. I would never, ever want to live a life without Jesus. So some things that I want to go over are some things that I used to think before I found Jesus and what I think now in comparison, because I feel like that's important, and just address some important things that I really want to bring up in this video before I bring it to a full close. The first thing, and this is something that I've brought up a lot, is that I used to think that the universe operated under frequency and intention. And I still understood the scale of the light versus dark as like the light being close to God and the dark being far from God. But I didn't have the perspective that I have now. And I thought that everything operated under frequency, that you change your reality through frequency, that you change yourself through frequency, that you use your intention to have authority over things and to direct things. And if I put my intention into this water, that it's gonna bring me money or something, then it will bring me money. Or if I put my intention into something that it will protect me, then it will. And if I visualize that I'm protected, then I am. And I just thought that everything operated under frequency and intention. And this just isn't how everything operates. It's not the wholeness of the truth of how this reality works. Intention and frequency are very important. And that understanding is still important for understanding reality, but it's not fully how it works. And I guess how I would describe my new understanding added to that is that, like, even if you are in the highest vibration ever and you are operating in love and your intentions are that you're protected and that you're in love and that's your frequency, you can still be attacked by the enemy. You can still have the enemy attack your health, attack your finances, attack your relationships. The devil can still come after you and will go after you 100% without the protection of Jesus. That is because the devil is a legalist and there is a legal system at play. And this is how the demonic realm operates in our life. And it is not contingent on frequency. It doesn't matter if you have a certain intention or you're in a certain vibration. If there is a legal entry point, he can still come into your life and still wreak havoc in your life and still oppress you or attack certain things in your life in some way. And one thing I want to add is, like, when I'm talking about him attacking you or demons coming into your life or something like that, I'm not necessarily referring to the case of this friend who was oppressed by demons and had to get them cast out of her. This could be just like randomly feeling sick or randomly having like things go wrong in your life, or like having really bad luck, or like, you know, it could like pop all your tires or something like that, and it could still be the enemy attacking you and coming after you and using demons to attack your life and have access to your life without you having demons yourself. So I just felt like it was important to clarify that for the people that don't have a Christian understanding. I feel like it's actually really sad that so many people think that it's all frequency, because then they blame themselves. And when things aren't going right, they're like, well, I guess I have more to heal. I guess I just have too much trauma. I guess I just can't get my frequency high enough. And I guess I have an emotion that is unlocked that I haven't gotten to yet. And they blame themselves. And that's what happens in the New Age community. And that's what I would experience as well. Like, oh, I must have something in my energy field that is bringing this into my life, or I must have created this, and I would justify it through anything that I possibly could. But now with my new understanding, I understand that it's because of the legal system that's at play. Something that I've learned since following Jesus and walking this path is that Everything that God has set up in this world, Satan has created a counterfeit version for, to trick you and also mock God's creation. And some examples of this, specifically in the New Age spirituality community, which I now know that it is fully set up to trick you and actually lead you down a path that brings you further away from God, aka closer to the enemy, which I know is so hard to hear. I know that that's probably sounds outrageous to so many people, but it is the truth, and it is what I know now, and it is what I've experienced. But back to what I was saying, some examples of this are God created the Holy Spirit, which holds God's light and God's love and the essence of God. And when you come into contact with it through Jesus, it will live in you, and it will empower you, and it will give you access to spiritual abilities. And the counterfeit version of this in the spiritual community is a Kundalini awakening and the Kundalini energy. This is a false version of the Holy Spirit, and it is meant to deceive you and to trick you. And it will actually, through trying to awaken your Kundalini, or if you've awakened your Kundalini, it invites in a demon named Kundalini. I have witnessed this firsthand, and as sad as it is, I know that it is the truth. And I know that it is so sad. And the past version of myself, honestly, would have had so much cognitive dissonance that I would have been like, you don't know me, you don't know my experience, that is not what I've experienced, that's not true, you just don't understand what I've been through and what I'm experiencing and what I'm feeling energetically, because I felt so much power in my Kundalini awakening, and I felt high frequency, and I felt so much love and excitement and this awakening of my senses, and it really just tricks you. It really just tricks you, because even though I felt that, it was also steering me wrong in a lot of ways and making my life so much harder for me. So that is one of the counterfeits that Satan has set up, and it is very dangerous to go down that path. It is one of the most intense demons that I have ever come up against, and it is not something to take lightly. Another counterfeit is a psychic reading versus prophecy. So in Christianity, there is something called prophecy, which is when someone gets a prophetic vision or message directly from God, from nothing else, and reveals it to you because God wants to share that thing with you. And that is prophecy. And it is a gift that any Christian can have and awaken, but it is not a psychic reading. You can't have prophecy from God if you don't have Jesus. And you can't know that that prophecy is truly from God unless Jesus is connected to it. And I know that that's gonna feel wrong to some people, because it would have to me, but it's the truth. I know this because I was someone that identified with being a psychic, and I did do psychic readings, and I understand that I was deceived and that I was communicating with demons, and they were using me to live out their agendas. And just because something is true does not mean it's from God, because demons know people, and they know you probably better than you know yourself. And they can tell you truths, and then they will work in a lie that will somehow pull you away from God and from the path and the plan that God has planned for you. And I know this because of psychic readings I've gotten myself. And through giving psychic readings, I fully understand what was happening and what I was communicating with when I was giving these readings. And I didn't know. I thought that it was just this like thing that I was connected to where I could just give people information. I thought that it was this gift, and I thought that it was God's gift, and God made me this way so that I could help people. But I was so deceived, and I just was so lost without the knowledge that I have now. To anyone that I've given a reading to, I'm so sorry if it led you down the wrong path. And even if it was true and all accurate and it all happened, you need to know that it was not from God. And anything that's not from God is not in your best interest. Spirit guides are not real. And if you think that you're communicating with a spirit guide, then I promise you, it's a demon. I know that that's just so hard to hear, because I would have lost my mind if someone said that to me. Angels are definitely real, but a lot of demons mask themselves as angels to trick people. They even mask themselves as Jesus himself. The main way that they mask themselves right now and get to people, especially in the New Age community, is through pretending to be higher dimensional beings. And this is the main way that they are tricking people in the New Age community. And it was the way that I was tricked myself. But it is full of deception when you open yourself up to communicating with the spirit realm without Jesus. It is never something that I would recommend for anyone. It is very dangerous spiritually. Another counterfeit is when you have the Holy Spirit, you can get something called tongues. And this is a prayer language that comes from God and brings you closer to God. And the counterfeit version of that, seen in the New Age community, is light language, but it is coming from a different frequency. I just want to say too, not everyone in the church accurately represents Christ and what I'm talking about. So you might experience people in the church that are speaking in tongues and it does not feel right, or their prophecy isn't right. This is why you can't rely on people, and you truly only can rely on Jesus, and you have to have a high level of spiritual discernment and develop spiritual discernment on your path, so you know and you can discern between what's of God and what's not. And that is something that is gifted to you when you grow closer to God. I would say that I had relatively good discernment even before coming to Jesus. I had pretty good spiritual discernment. Honestly, I could discern between energies very well. I could read people very well. But my discernment increased to a level I had never experienced after I got baptized myself. And I saw things and people in ways that I was just blocked from seeing before. It was like something had just like been lifted off of my eyes, and I would see people and things that I would like be entertained by before, and I was like, oh, this does not feel good. This does not feel like it's from God. This is not leading me closer to God. And I just had my discernment increase profoundly after becoming baptized. And the closer I got to Jesus, the more that increased. Another counterfeit with Christianity and the New Age community is the kingdom of God and the fifth dimension. Another one is the belief that there is going to be a new earth and that the earth is going to split and the old earth is going to be left behind, and the only people that are going to the new earth are people in a high enough frequency that have ascended to the fifth dimension. This is the counterfeit version of what the Bible describes as the rapture. And when I realized that, I was so shocked, and it just really took me back, because I genuinely did believe in all of the counterfeits before, and I practiced them in my own practice. So it was very humbling and just mind-blowing to change my belief on that and to see things in a new light. Going back to my old view of Christianity, I just saw it as something that perpetuated shame and stifled expression. And that's because I understood religion and I didn't know Jesus. When you know Jesus, you no longer see things from that religious perspective. What you're experiencing there is religion, but Jesus himself and following Jesus isn't necessarily a religion. And I'll try and explain that the best that I can. I'm still learning how to explain my new opinions and my new experiences, but I'll try my best. I felt so free and happy when I knew that following Jesus didn't mean that I had to fall into the religion that I had experienced and the religion that I had witnessed and imagined. I felt so free knowing that I could just follow Jesus. I could just open my heart and follow him and try and be like him and commit to him and have him in my life and get closer to him and develop a relationship with him. That was so freeing to me because I didn't know you could have that without the other, and that the other was actually just people that had fallen into religion and fallen out of close relationship with Jesus, because it's all about relationship. It's not about religion. And if you are making it about religion, then you have disconnected from, I think, the heart of why you're doing what you're doing. And it is for Jesus and to be like Jesus and to get closer to Jesus. And that is so personal and done directly through the heart. I feel like there's so much more that I want to share, but I can't even think of it right now. I can imagine that some of you would have a lot of questions for me after watching this video. I'm sure some of you think that I'm insane or that I've gone crazy, and that's totally fine. I would have thought the same thing if I would have seen this video before. So no hard feelings there. But if you do have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, because I'm going to be doing a follow-up Q&A for everyone's questions. So please comment your questions below, and I'm going to make a full video answering people's questions. You can really ask me anything about the faith, about what I've been through, anything personal at all. And like I said before, if you don't feel comfortable asking your question in the comments, you can always DM me or reach out to me. I'll be happy to answer your questions there. And yeah, if you stayed through to the end of this video, I am so grateful for you. Thank you so much for listening to my story and listening to everything that I had to say. I know that it is a wild journey and a wild story. Even for some Christians, this might be like really outside of the box for them, but it's my story and it's God's story in my life, and it's the story that he wrote in my life for a reason, and it's my favorite story that I've ever experienced, because it's the story where I found God and I found myself and I found the greatest thing that's ever happened to me, which is Jesus, and I am in love with my story. So thank you for being here. And for the people that watch this video and are open to allowing Jesus to come into your life, I would love to lead you in a small, short and sweet prayer to invite him into your life. There is no pressure to get on the path I am now with doing this prayer. There is no pressure to change anything about yourself. It is simply prayer to just invite him into your heart, and that's it. Okay? All right. Dear Jesus, I open my heart to you now. I sit here in humble gratitude and openness to you. I want to know what it is that you have to offer, and I want to see what you can do in my life. I open my heart to learning from you and getting to know you. Amen. Okay, that's it. Well, thank you so much. If you watched my prayer and did it with me, I'm so excited for you and to see what happens for you in your life. I'd love to hear about your journey if something's happening in your life because of it. And yeah, I'm just so, so, so grateful.